It was meant to be just another high-voltage broadcast. President Donald Trump had agreed to appear on Real Talk with Blake Jensen, a show famous for its fiery monologues and relentless criticism. The stage was dramatic, the lights sharp, the audience primed for confrontation. Across the country, millions tuned in, expecting sparks. Blake Jensen stood tall at center stage, charismatic, sharp-tongued, and openly critical of Trump for years. There was no smile on his face as the president walked out, offering his familiar wave to crowd. Trump appeared calm, almost casual. As he began thanking the show for the invitation, Blake cut him off. "Mr. President, let's skip the pleasantries. People are hurting, and they say you're not listening." A ripple moved through the studio. Crew members stiffened. The audience fell silent. Trump raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. Blake stepped closer, voice tightening. "Why do you only show up when the cameras are on? Where were you when my brother, a disabled veteran, lost his home?" The shift was immediate. This wasn't political theater anymore. Trump's expression changed, not defensive, not angry, just attentive. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said quietly. "What happened?" Blake hadn't prepared for that question. He had rehearsed attacks, not empathy. For a moment, he faltered. "He served in Afghanistan," Blake began, fighting to steady his voice. "Came back with PTSD. Couldn't hold a job. The bills stacked up. He applied for help, but it got buried in bureaucracy. Last month, he died. Heart failure. Alone." The studio went still. Trump looked down briefly, then back at Blake. "That shouldn't have happened. I want to hear everything. Not here, after this. Off camera." Blake's instinct was skepticism. "What's the point? You'll leave. The media will spin it. Nothing changes." Trump didn't hesitate. "Try me." Moments later, producers cut to commercial. The lights dimmed. Backstage, in a quiet room far from cameras, the energy was different. No applause. No performance. Just two men. Blake spoke about his brother Ryan. How proud he had been to serve. How invisible he felt when he returned home. He wasn't asking for charity, Blake said. Just dignity. Trump listened without interrupting. "I've met thousands of veterans," he said finally. "But the ones who fall through the cracks, that's on all of us." He asked for Ryan's full name, his unit, the timeline. He wrote it down himself. "I can't bring him back," Trump said. "But I promise you his story won't be ignored." When the show resumed, something had shifted. Blake's tone softened, not weaker, just grounded. Instead of trading blows, he asked about veterans' housing, PTSD treatment, delays in benefits processing. Trump answered directly. He acknowledged gaps. He admitted flaws. "I'm not perfect," Trump said, "but we owe people like Ryan better." The online chat exploded, not with outrage, but with stories. Veterans shared experiences. Families wrote about struggles. For once, the conversation felt less like a battlefield and more like a reckoning. 2 days later, Blake received an envelope with official White House letterhead. Inside was a handwritten note. "Blake, I've asked my team to reopen your brother Ryan's case and investigate delays in veteran aid processing. His story reminded me that sometimes the truth doesn't come from briefings. It comes from brave voices. Thank you for speaking up. Donald J. Trump." Attached was direct contact information for a senior VA officer. Blake read the letter several times, unsure whether to feel hopeful or cautious. The next morning, Colonel Angela Reed from the Veteran Affairs Rapid Response Unit called. "The President personally requested we review your brother's file. We've begun." "Why now?" Blake asked quietly. "Because someone told his story where it couldn't be ignored." Within days, Blake's mother received overdue benefits, an official apology from the Department of Defense, and something else, a medal Ryan had earned but never received. Blake held it in his hands, tears forming. This is all he ever wanted, he whispered, to matter. On his next broadcast, Blake opened differently. "I've carried anger for years," he told viewers. "This week, something unexpected happened. A man I've criticized many times listened. And he acted. I didn't expect that." He held up the medal. The audience response wasn't about politics. It was about vulnerability, about a system being challenged not by shouting, but by truth, People didn't praise a party. They praised a moment of humanity. Whether it was lasting change or a single powerful gesture remained to be seen. But for one grieving brother, and for countless viewers watching, something rare had happened on live television. Two opponents stopped arguing long enough to listen, and for once, that made all the difference. Viewers didn't just see a rating spike. They saw a man letting go of a piece of his bitterness. Blake's audience doubled, but more importantly, his voice changed. The outrage that once fueled his show began making room for something else. Outreach. A week after the broadcast, another message arrived. The president wanted to visit Ryan's grave. No cameras. No press. Quietly, Blake stared at the phone in disbelief. Why? The reply was simple. Because I never met him, but I owe him something. They met on a cool Thursday morning beneath a pale sky. It was just the two of them, with a Secret Service agent standing respectfully at a distance. Trump placed a small American flag beside the headstone and gently set the long-overdue medal near Ryan's name. He stood there in silence before whispering, "Thank you for serving when it wasn't easy." Blake watched, unsure what to feel. For a brief moment, politics dissolved. There were no headlines, no debates, just a grave, a flag, and gratitude. Not far away, an older man had been observing. Sam Torres, a retired Marine, had come to visit a fallen friend. After Trump left, he approached Blake. "I saw your show," Sam said. "Your brother's story. It reminded me of my own. I thought nobody cared anymore." Blake shook his hand firmly. "I care, and apparently so does he." Sam smiled. "Maybe it's time we start believing that again." The following week, Blake invited Sam onto Real Talk. It became one of the most watched episodes in the show's history. Ryan's story had opened something larger than either Blake or Trump anticipated. Hundreds of veterans wrote in, some grateful, some angry, all raw and real. Blake launched a new segment, Voices of the Forgotten. Each week, he spotlighted a veteran whose story had slipped through the cracks. Trump noticed. "You're doing good work," he told Blake during a phone call. "I'm just telling the truth," Blake replied. Trump chuckled softly. "That's what I've been trying to do, too." Their unlikely respect began shaping something bigger than either man. A month later, Trump extended a formal invitation, host a roundtable with veterans at the White House. Blake hesitated. "I don't want to be used for PR." "Then don't let yourself be," Trump answered. "Come say what needs to be said." Blake agreed, on one condition. No scripts. Real veterans. Real stories. Trump agreed. The roundtable aired live. It was raw, emotional, and unfiltered. Veterans spoke of triumph and trauma. Trump listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, it was measured. The broadcast trended globally. Afterward, Blake remained behind. Trump offered him a tour of the White House, something Blake once swore he would never accept. They walked past portraits of presidents and through historic halls. "I'm not here to be impressed," Blake joked. "I didn't bring you here to impress you," Trump replied. "I brought you because I want your help." "With what?" "Veterans, communication, trust. Whatever you're doing, it's working." 2 weeks later, Blake received a formal proposal. Co-chair bipartisan media advisory board focused on veteran outreach and transparency. "I'm just a host," Blake protested. "No," Trump corrected him. "You're a voice, and you're not afraid to ask hard questions." Blake called his mother. "Am I crazy for even considering this?" She answered gently. Ryan would be proud. Not everyone agreed. Backlash came quickly. Some accused Blake of selling out. Others called him a traitor to journalism. He addressed it head-on during a live monologue. "If sitting at a table with someone I disagree with helps veterans," he said, "then call me whatever you want. My brother taught me that silence never fixes anything." It became the most powerful speech of his career. Among the flood of messages he received, one stood out. A handwritten note from an 11-year-old girl named Sophie. "My dad is a soldier," she wrote. "You help people remember us. Thank you for not yelling and for being kind." Blake cried as he read it on air. "This," he told viewers, "is why we talk, not with fists, but with truth in heart." Gradually, The tone of national conversation began to shift. Fewer shouting matches, more listening. Veteran care processing times improved. Lawmakers introduced a Ryan Reform Act aimed at streamlining aid for disabled veterans. During the signing, Trump publicly credited Blake. Sometimes it takes someone yelling at you on live TV to open your eyes, he joked, drawing laughter and applause. On the anniversary of Ryan's passing, Trump invited Blake and his mother to Arlington National Cemetery. There, they discovered a surprise, a plaque honoring Ryan's service and the story that sparked reform. Blake's mother wept softly. He would have never imagined this. Neither would Blake. Months later, Trump returned to real talk. The energy was different now, still honest, but respectful. At the end of the interview, Blake asked, "Do you regret coming on my show that day?" Trump smiled. "Not for a second. You were angry, but you were right." They shook hands. The moment spread across the internet. A year later, during a college lecture, Blake was asked what had changed him. He paused before answering, listening, and being listened to. Then he added, "If your pain turns into purpose, it can heal others too." The quote went viral. Eventually, Blake stepped away from daily broadcasting to focus on advocacy and veteran affairs full-time. Trump, no longer in office, continued supporting the initiatives they built together. Two very different men, once defined by opposition, had found common ground in service. And for the millions who watched that first explosive broadcast, one truth endured. Sometimes change doesn't begin with policy. It begins with conversation.